Last week, one pollster had the Green Party of England and Wales in second, behind only Reform. Find Out Now, a member of the British Polling Council, had Zack Polanski's party 3 points ahead of Labour and 7 ahead of the Liberal Democrats. And while that's just one poll, and the most sunny so far for the Greens, the general trend is clear. The party with just 4 seats is gaining a truly national profile, at least in terms of membership, polling, and increasingly, media coverage. To a large extent, that is the result of Zack Polanski being elected as party leader 2 months ago. Since then, the Greens' membership has more than doubled, but more than anything else is Polanski's gift when it comes to the media. And that polish was on display over the weekend. Here he is speaking to Trevor Phillips, allegedly Sky News' most heavyweight interviewer, on Sunday. Phillips started the conversation asking about the relevance of Remembrance Sunday.
Zack Polanski, you'll be attending the Remembrance Day rituals today. Why does this day remain relevant?
It remains relevant because we still live in a world that's particularly in global turmoil right now, where the threat of war remains ever constant. And indeed, whether it's in Gaza or Sudan, there are conflicts and genocides happening throughout the world. I think the important moment to stop today is both to remember the fallen victims, to remember the world wars we've had, and also to look ahead towards peace and diplomacy, and how we can work together across nations to make sure that peace is never taken as something that is complacent or a given, but actually is always an active piece of work to strive towards a more peaceful world.
When you say fallen victims, you do include the military, the soldiers in that?
Yeah, undoubtedly, people who gave their life for this country.
What the hell is Trevor Phillips expecting him to say? That Remembrance Sunday is for everybody except the soldiers that died, particularly in the Great War. Millions of ordinary young men who had no idea what they were getting involved in. Of course, you had historic levels of voluntary entry into the war from all sides in a way that isn't really replicated in the Second World War because they've seen how bad things went a few decades earlier. Of course, that's who it's about. But what Trevor Phillips was hoping for here was just, I don't know what he was hoping for, a clanger? He was hoping for Zack Polanski to say something stupid? I don't know. And next, the conversation moved on to military budgets, nuclear weapons, and Putin.
Your party wants to get rid of nuclear weapons, move to emphasis onto diplomacy, development, and so on and so forth. If Greens were part of a government, would we expect to have fewer men and women underarmed by the end of your term of office?
Well, I think that depends what's happening in the world. I think it would always be foolish to assume anything about military budgets without knowing the political context you're working in. I would say more widely, though, if we're talking about right now, we've got a Prime Minister who's spending £15 billion on nuclear weapons and at the same time saying there's no money to lift the two-child benefit cap, for instance, something that's keeping 350,000 children in poverty. So I think it's right to question political choices at budget time.
Surely the deterrent is valuable in a world that has Vladimir Putin in it.
Well, I want to see everyone denuclearise, including Vladimir Putin. But ultimately, the only way you can do that is by showing...
But I have to say that would be in the realms of the miracle?
Well, you're laughing at it, but I think it's important that we don't laugh at peace. I think it's really important.
No, I'm laughing at the idea that Vladimir Putin is going to give up his nuclear weapons because somebody asks him to.
Well, you could have laughed at the point of Nelson Mandela negotiating with the ANC, or we could have laughed at the Irish during the Troubles.
You're not sincerely making the comparison. Come on.
I am making the comparison. I think it's always impossible until it's done, and I think it's really important. I don't think it's likely. That's a different question. But I think the first question has to be, do you believe that we can work for peace and diplomacy in the world? Do we believe that we can work with people that we have mass disagreement with, that are they're obviously created an illegal invasion of Ukraine? These are really serious issues. And at the same time, I believe we should never leave the negotiating table. And part of that is showing both the moral and courageous leadership to come on TV and say to you, even though this might be a position that's ridiculed, I don't think we should find peace and diplomacy ridiculous. I think we actually, the most brave and courageous and authentic to do is say, I believe we can have a world without war.
So Prime Minister Polanski would negotiate with President Putin?
Undoubtedly. I think it would be sociopathic behaviour to say you wouldn't negotiate with the President or a Prime Minister of any country.
So there will be no electoral deal, however informal, with Labour?
I think it'd be, Trev, I don't know if you were reining it in a little bit, you're phoning it in. Maybe you was a bit hungover. I mean, bear in mind this is on a Sunday morning, right? Trevor Phillips kind of seems a bit half-assed. Doesn't really care. He's just expecting, Zach Polanski, he's probably so woke, he'll just fall over himself and do my job for me. And then Zach Polanski is saying, no, I think it would be sociopathic not to talk to the head of state of another country in order to avoid war. Of course he's right. Of course he's right. And then you have Trevor Phillips, who's an older man. I think he's 70. He's seen a lot. He's not stupid. I hope. He's not stupid. He's been a senior person in this country's public life for decades. And he's saying, you can't seriously think that people would just give up nuclear weapons. And guess what, buddy? That's been happening for decades. South Africa gave up nuclear weapons. The apartheid regime had probably around 5 atom bombs. Gave them up. Argentina had a nuclear program. Guess what? Gave it up. Sweden. People don't know this. Sweden had a nuclear program. Guess what? Gave it up. They have quite a large, powerful country to their east. You might have heard of it. At the time, it was called the USSR. Gave it up. The Germans had a nuclear program. Gave it up. Even our weapons with Trident are much less powerful than they were decades ago with the hydrogen bomb. You had all kinds of international laws and treaties between the United States and the USSR prohibiting various kinds of testing. From the 60s, you stop overground testing. You have all kinds of prohibitions on the size of the bombs, on the use of how they're delivered, the delivery vehicles, the ICBMs. Then with Gorbachev and Reagan, you have people actually reducing the number of warheads they have. You have START 1, you have START 2. So actually, Trevor, if you have any idea about what the hell you're talking about, the last 50 years has been a story where countries, including the United States and the USSR, during the literal Cold War, were reducing their ability to destroy one another. So that's not utopian. That's not crazy. That's been happening. And in the last 10 years, we're actually moving in a different direction. But from the early 1960s onwards, basically after the construction of the hydrogen bomb, which is it's called a thermonuclear weapon. It's different from the original atomic bomb. It's far more destructive, okay? Far more destructive. And basically, when that is created, when you have the Tsar bomber, the largest ever nuclear device ever detonated by humans, by the Soviet Union, people take a step back and they go, whoa, this is really crazy. We now have the ability to exterminate the entire human species. Maybe we shouldn't do that. Maybe we should try and walk things back. And at the time, there were people in Britain saying, well, the Russians are crazy. It'll never change. And there were people in the Soviet Union saying, well, the Americans and the Brits are crazy. You can't negotiate with them. We didn't wipe each other out. And we talk on this show a lot about how things went wrong, how there were so many disasters in the 20th century. So many. And there were. Genocides, ethnic cleansing, war, famine. There were. Crazy. So many crazy things. It was a miracle that nuclear weapons weren't used after 1945. It was a miracle. It's been 80 years this year. It would be a miracle if we go another 80 years and they're not used. So the idea that you can scoff at somebody who is really eager to avoid that outcome by any means necessary tells me how privileged you are. And I don't mean privilege in terms of economic background or your ability to access education. I'm saying you didn't have to participate in a nuclear holocaust. There's another timeline where that happens. We're very fortunate not to have been in it. We owe our kids and our grandkids to enjoy the same conditions. After asking Polanski about the meaning of the white poppy, and frankly going nowhere with that question too, towards the end of their chat, Phillips touted the possibility that Green Party success would only help one man, Nigel Farage.
So there will be no electoral deal, however informal, with Labour, even though the division on the left might let reform into number 10.
Well, there's two things there. So in a recent poll just yesterday or the day before, Greens are actually outpolling the Labour Party. We're in 3 points ahead. So the real question you should be asking Keir Starmer is, will he stand aside to make sure that Nigel Farage isn't Prime Minister? But more widely, I was answering about Keir Starmer. I don't think Keir Starmer will be the Prime Minister at the next election. I think it's another question whether he'll even be an MP. And so will I work with a future Labour leader? Depends who the future Labour leader is.
Oh, who would you like?
It's not really for me to decide who the Labour leader is. What I would like to see is more and more people voting and joining the Green Party, which is why membership of the Green Party has over doubled in the last 2 months. I intend to keep helping make it grow.
OK, but a lot of people in the Labour Party who might fancy some sort of alliance with the Greens would be quite interested to know who they might support in the event that there's a vacancy that would make that alliance easier. Give them some guidance.
Well, I can give some examples. I think Nadia Whittome, for instance, would make an excellent leader of the Labour Party. I don't think it's something she's necessarily in her ambitions right now, nor would the Labour Party. I'm sure she wouldn't mind me saying necessarily support that.
A left-wing MP, a very left-wing MP.
Well, I think you say very left-wing, but actually, when we look at what's happening in this country right now, look how far we've shifted to the right in terms of the conversation around migration, the conversation around privatising our National Health Service through the back door. I don't think these are very left-wing ideals, and I don't think that would be a problem if they were. But actually, what I'm saying is where the majority of the country are at, which is we should nationalise our public services, invest in our National Health Service, and tax multimillionaires and billionaires just a little bit more.
Well, tax multimillionaires and billionaires... only them? That's not going to raise much money.
No, so there's other things like bringing capital gains tax in line with income tax. The reason why that matters is right now we tax earned income more than we tax unearned wealth. That seems absolutely outrageous to most people as a result of political choices, and we can make different political choices.
The Chancellor, it appears, is likely to raise income tax, maybe 1p, 2p, for everybody. Will your members of Parliament vote for that?
I can't demand what our members of Parliament vote for because they have a free vote, but I would say the principles that we're all standing by is that those with the broadest shoulders should face the biggest burden, and that doesn't make sense to do that across the board universally. People are struggling so hard right now.
So you don't want to rise an income tax?
No, people are tired and exhausted. Their wages haven't gone up, but food prices are going up. How can you make some of the hardest working people who haven't had a pay rise in years pay extra tax and allow multimillionaires and billionaires to continue not paying capital gains?
All right.
All right. We've got a guy who's actually saying some quite popular things here, and he's left-wing. OK, let's go elsewhere, right? By the way, there'll be a ton of people who are reform curious in the next general election who will be exposed to that kind of policy, that kind of messaging from Zack Polanski. Whatever you think about it, right? You might be a pragmatist and say it's pie in the sky, we have to increase taxes. And to be clear, with regards to Labour, they want to increase income tax in terms of 2p on the basic rate, but then they want to reduce national insurance contributions. So working people probably be level pegging. Pensioners, very rich people, landlords will be paying more. Now, you might think that's reasonable, right? Zack Polanski doesn't think that. But in any case, the fact you've got somebody on the left saying, no, let's increase capital gains tax and keep income tax where it is a real problem for Labour. Structurally, it's a very hard sell when you have, to your right, Reform saying all kinds of things about immigration and law and order, and to your left, the Greens saying, let's increase capital gains tax. And by the way, we tax capital gains at a lower rate, not just on incomes, but on dividends. There's no excuse for it. A few days earlier, Polanski appeared on a different kind of show, Channel 4's The Last Leg. Here he is responding to questions as Prime Minister Polanski outside number 10.
Zack,
What are they doing with these mics?
Sorry.
we're gonna throw some questions at you. You have to answer them without waffling.
OK.
No waffle bombs. If you do waffle, to punish you, as leader of the Green Party, Josh and Alex are going to rev a motorbike and release pollution into the atmosphere.
Wait.
Here we go. Jacob said, with Labor reform and the Tories all attacking disabled people, how would the Greens do disability differently?
Nothing about us without us. We need to make sure that disabled people are at the centre of policy around disabled people. Actually, if we create better housing, if we make sure our transport is more accessible, that's good for everyone, especially disabled people.
OK, well done. Grace.
OK.
Thank you.
Who would you cast to play climate change in a movie?
Nigel Farage, he's full of hot air anyway.
OK. Is there a horn on this?
It's more stressful than question time, I'm just saying.
Horatio said, why is the Green Party so firmly against nuclear energy?
Because Sizewell C has taken like 27 years to build. It's like creating the fax machine right now. We need to invest in renewable wind and solar.
Alex.
Yeah, I've got a big one for you. So, wind farms, trees, pandas, snog, marry, kill, go.
Stop the pandas.
What?
What were the other ones?
Wind farms and trees.
Trees.
So you've got
Stop
to
the
marry
trees,
one and kill one.
Marry the pandas. I don't want to kill any wind farms. I don't want to kill anyone.
Have you ever watched porn somewhere you shouldn't by accident?
Obviously.
Cinnabon said, many young people feel disconnected from politics. What do you think are the best ways to get them more involved and have their voices heard?
Yeah, stop saying we're inspired by young people. Let's actually help them to get into positions of power.
Nice.
We need to invest in young people, give them the resources, the confidence and the skills to actually represent themselves.
Great. Josh.
Do you think you'd be better as a traitor or a faithful?
Claudia Winkleman. I like it when she just shouts at people.
Yeah.
I still can't believe Alan killed Paloma.
Kai said, could you clarify, because some are confused, what the Green Party's stance is on NATO?
Yeah, Donald Trump is an unreliable ally. He's someone who wants to annex Greenland.
Yeah.
I want to look at peace and diplomacy. Working with our European neighbours, that's very threatening.
Grace.
Have you ever sacked off a paper straw for a plastic straw? Be honest.
No. Who does that?
I have.
Oh,
Sorry.
we need to talk.
Sorry.
Final question from Marty. Marty said, do penguins have knees?
The penguins have knees?
Yeah.
If they choose to, however they self-identify.
I thought that was a really funny answer, and it underscores how Zack Polanski doesn't take himself too seriously. And again, there's a ton of things which are associated with the left in this country, rightly or wrongly. One of them is taking yourself really seriously and just being really serious and telling people what to do and telling people off. He's not doing that. There's a comment here from Zimmy9745. I like Zack, but I don't think the UK is ready for this type of politics. As a whole, this country is not progressive enough, not educated enough. Well, I would say to that, look, I don't think Zack Polanski is going to become the Prime Minister. I certainly don't think the Greens are going to be the largest party in Parliament. But can they, with this brand of politics, guerrilla marketing with the media, growing your membership, left populism, going after the Labour vote, going in the major cities, can they do all of that and get 50 seats? Yeah. Yes, they can. Maybe more. I'm not saying they will get 50 seats. They've got 4 right now. If they get double figures, that's an accomplishment. But they could get 50 seats. And that completely reorients the entire political calculation for the Labour Party. Also should be said, I wonder, would Keir Starmer be insinuating they're going to get rid of the 2-child benefit cap if Zack Polanski wasn't so prominent right now in the public conversation? If the Green Party hadn't outpolled Labour twice in 2 polls in 2 weeks, would Labour be doing that? I don't think so. I don't think so. On that point, finally, of Zack Polanski not taking himself too seriously, I was really struck by this article in The Guardian by the man himself. Here's the title. The right can mock my teeth all it wants. It shows the Greens have struck a nerve. I think he's absolutely right. It's a great article too. Go read it for yourself. But that's the point, isn't it? The fact that he's being mocked for his teeth says he can't be mocked for his policies, and certainly not for his critique of the present political moment.